I want you to just picture a scenario for a second. It's a Tuesday morning. You have this really high stakes meeting, or, maybe a first date, or just one of those days where you absolutely have to bring your A game.
Oh yeah, the kind of day where your outfit really matters.
Exactly. So you spend like a solid hour putting together the perfect look. The silhouette is sharp, the colors are perfectly coordinated. You look in the mirror and it just works.
Right, you feel totally put
You
together.
step out the front door feeling like $1 million, but then about halfway through your commute, maybe you're squeezed onto a crowded train or just speed walking to the office. This really specific, highly unpleasant reality sets in.
Oh, I know exactly where this is going.
Right. You realize you're trapped. You are locked inside this uncomfortable, increasingly sweaty, suffocating fabric prison. I mean, we've all experienced this exact moment of regret, haven't we?
It's a universally uncomfortable experience, and it
Hmm.
almost always happens precisely when you need, all your cognitive resources focused on something else entirely.
Yes. Instead of mentally rehearsing your presentation, your internal monologue is just screaming about how your shirt is somehow sticking to your shoulder blades.
Exactly. You're suddenly acutely aware of your own rising body temperature. It's totally distracting.
It's trapping the heat of 1,000 suns, and you're just trying to play it cool. So the real question is why this happens so frequently. And I think it comes down to the fact that we're just easily distracted by the surface.
We really are. We prioritize the aesthetic design, the seasonal color palette, the tailored fit.
And we completely ignore the absolute most critical structural element of the whole equation, which is the physical material itself.
We treat the fabric composition as just a minor afterthought. But in reality, the material is the architectural foundation of the entire experience of wearing clothes.
If the foundation is flawed, the aesthetic design is basically irrelevant. Which brings us to the core mission of today's deep dive. We are exploring a really fascinating body of research centered on breathable cotton.
It's a great topic. The science behind it is surprisingly deep.
It really is. We're going to unpack the underlying physics of why this centuries-old natural plant fiber just continues to completely dominate modern wardrobes. It consistently outperforms all these highly engineered synthetic alternatives.
And we'll get into the hidden dermatological impacts of your daily clothing choices too, plus the massive ecological footprint of our closets.
Right. And most importantly, we're going to talk about how you can use this knowledge to fundamentally change the way you shop.
It's a fascinating trajectory. We're actually going to start by looking at the microscopic cellular structure of a plant and then trace how that structure governs the global textile industry.
And the health of your own skin.
Hmm.
So let's get right into that microscopic level. In an era where we have, space-aged polymers and textiles engineered in multi-million-dollar labs.
Fabrics designed to stretch in four directions and repel water.
Right. With all that tech, why are we dedicating this much time to something as fundamentally old school as cotton?
Well, because, true, sustained comfort isn't achieved by just chasing the latest laboratory innovation. It's dictated by the fundamental biology of how our bodies interact with our physical environment.
Because we're biological organisms at the end of the day.
Exactly. We continuously generate thermal energy, we constantly excrete moisture to cool ourselves down, and our skin needs to breathe.
So the materials we place in direct contact with our skin need to work in tandem with that biology, not fight against it.
Precisely. And to understand how a material works with our biology, we really need to look at its architecture.
Right, because when we talk about cotton being breathable, we aren't just using some marketing buzzword. There's actual physics at play here, isn't there?
Oh, absolutely. Cotton is a natural fiber, and it's primarily composed of cellulose. If you look at a cotton fiber under a microscope, it isn't a solid uniform cylinder like a plastic filament.
What does it look like then?
It has this complex textured structure with a naturally hollow core. That core is known as the lumen. So this cellular structure naturally creates microscopic gaps and pathways.
Okay, so on a structural level, the material itself is physically open. It isn't just about how the threads are woven together into a shirt. The individual threads themselves actually contain empty space.
That is the crucial distinction. Because of that natural structure, air can circulate freely not just through the weave of the fabric, but in and around the fibers themselves.
Oh, wow. That makes a lot of sense.
And furthermore, cellulose is inherently hydrophilic. That means it naturally attracts and absorbs water molecules.
And this is where we have to contrast it with synthetic fabrics, right? Because we all know materials like polyester, nylon, acrylic, they're petroleum-based. They are, for all intents and purposes, plastics.
They're essentially extruded plastic polymers.
Yeah.
The manufacturing process involves melting down these polymers and literally pulling them into continuous, perfectly smooth, solid microscopic filaments.
So if the synthetic filament is a perfectly smooth, solid piece of plastic, there are no natural gaps.
None at all. The water has nowhere to go.
The analogy that came to my mind when I was reading the sources wasn't the old plastic wrap versus screen door cliche. It's more like comparing a mirror to a sponge.
I like that. A mirror and a sponge.
Yeah, because if you radiate heat and moisture toward a synthetic mirror, it has no capacity to absorb it. It simply reflects that thermal energy and dampness directly back onto your skin.
While cotton acts like a structural sponge.
Exactly. It pulls that thermal energy and moisture into its own cellular matrix, moving it away from your body so it can just evaporate on the outside.
That mirror and sponge analogy perfectly captures the thermodynamics of what's happening. Our bodies regulate our core temperature primarily through the evaporation of sweat.
Because evaporation is a cooling process.
Right. But if you're wearing the synthetic mirror, the sweat physically cannot evaporate into the surrounding air. The moisture just pools on the surface of your skin.
And the heat gets trapped in that microclimate between your body and the garment, which completely short-circuits the body's natural temperature regulation.
It really does.
Yeah.
The biological mechanism designed to cool you down ends up making you feel like you're standing inside a humid greenhouse.
Which makes natural breathable fibers the objectively superior choice for any scenario requiring sustained comfort, like navigating a stressful 12-hour workday or sitting on a cramped airplane.
Or just going about your weekend. You need a material that manages your microclimate through natural physics, rather than one that turns your outfit into a thermal trap.
Okay, but wait. Let me push back on this a little bit because I think a lot of listeners will be wondering this too.
Sure, what's on your mind?
Well, if cotton is a sponge and it's so incredibly efficient at absorbing moisture, doesn't it just get heavy and wet and clingy? I mean, athletic brands have spent decades and billions of dollars convincing us that we need synthetic, moisture-wicking gear so our clothes dry instantly.
That is the exact question most people have. And it requires us to separate brilliant marketing from actual material science.
Okay, lay it on me. Why would I want a wet cotton shirt on a hot day instead of a high-tech polyester shirt?
Well, it's true that in extreme, high-output athletic scenarios like running a marathon where you're sweating profusely and continuously, a synthetic fabric can offer rapid drying times.
Right.
But the way synthetics achieve this moisture-wicking magic is highly problematic for everyday wear.
Because plastic inherently repels water, right? It's hydrophobic. So how on earth does a plastic shirt wick moisture?
Good question. To make a hydrophobic plastic act like it absorbs water, manufacturers actually have to coat the synthetic threads in specialized chemical treatments.
Wait, really? Chemical coatings?
Yes, these chemicals force the moisture to travel along the surface of the perfectly smooth synthetic threads. But here's the catch. Those chemical coatings are temporary.
Let me guess. After a certain number of washes, the coating degrades.
Exactly. Once it degrades, you're just left with a plain plastic shirt that simply traps sweat against your skin.
So the high-tech performance is literally washing down the drain, leaving you with a garment that fights your body's natural cooling process. That's wild.
It is. Cotton, on the other hand, relies on its intrinsic physical structure to manage moisture. It absorbs sweat naturally through capillary action, pulling it away from the skin.
So for everyday wear, this steady structural absorption is far superior to some temporary chemical coating.
Without a doubt.
And this brings us to a massive realization from the research. We tend to think of this dynamic just in terms of comfort, whether we feel hot or cold. But this microclimate we're talking about has serious dermatological consequences.
Very serious. When we trap heat and moisture against the skin using synthetic polymers, we are actively altering our skin's microbiome.
Because your skin is your largest organ, right? And
Yeah.
it hosts this complex ecosystem of bacteria.
Yes. When you wear non-breathable synthetics, you're creating an artificially warm, damp, enclosed environment. You are essentially building an incubator.
And what thrives in a warm, damp incubator? Bacteria.
Exactly. When sweat cannot evaporate, the pH balance of the skin begins to shift.
And according to the sources, this disruption often leads to chafing, localized irritation, contact dermatitis, and even body acne.
Which is why dermatologists consistently recommend natural fibers like cotton. Maintaining airflow prevents that microenvironment from becoming hostile to your skin.
There's another aspect to this bacterial incubator that the sources dive into, which explains something that has literally baffled me for years.
Oh, What's that?
We've all had that one synthetic gym shirt that, no matter how many times you wash it, always has this faint, lingering odor that immediately flares up the second you get slightly warm.
Ah, yes, the permanent gym shirt smell.
Why does that happen with synthetics but not with cotton?
It comes down to the chemical relationship between the fabric and the bacteria on your skin. Sweat itself is actually odorless.
Right, I've heard that.
The smell we associate with body odor is actually the byproduct of bacteria breaking down the proteins and lipids in your sweat. And during this process, volatile organic compounds, or VOCs, are released.
Okay, so the bacteria create the VOCs. How does the fabric come into play?
Well, synthetic polymers, like polyester, carry a natural electrostatic charge that is highly oleophilic, which means it attracts oils.
Oh, I see where this is going.
The volatile organic compounds that cause body odor bind incredibly strongly to these synthetic fibers at a molecular level. Standard laundry detergent often just struggles to break that bond.
So the odor gets permanently trapped in the plastic matrix of the shirt.
Yep. Cotton, being a hydrophilic plant fiber, releases these oils and compounds much more easily in the wash.
That is fascinating. The synthetic shirt isn't just trapping the sweat in the moment, it's chemically hoarding the odor compounds permanently.
It really is. It's no wonder it feels cleaner to wear natural fibers.
And this biological management doesn't just stop when we take off our work clothes. The research strongly emphasizes the impact of fabric on our sleep architecture, too.
Sleep is perhaps when our body's thermoregulation is most critical. When you transition into the deeper stages of sleep, particularly REM sleep, your core body temperature naturally drops.
Your body radiates that heat outward. So if you're wearing synthetic pajamas or sleeping under polyester sheets, you're basically wrapping yourself in that thermal mirror right when your body is actively trying to shed heat.
Which causes micro-awakenings. You might not fully wake up and remember it, but the trapped heat pulls you out of deep, restorative sleep phases.
But by wearing breathable cotton sleepwear, you facilitate that natural drop in core temperature.
Right. The continuous airflow prevents overheating, allowing your body to maintain the precise thermal curve required for optimal sleep quality.
Okay, if we zoom out from the microenvironment of our skin and our beds, the implications of this material science scale up dramatically.
They really do. The transition from how a fabric affects human biology to how it affects planetary ecology is incredibly direct.
Let's talk about the eco-equation, because we can't discuss the superiority of natural fibers without addressing the end-of-life cycle of the garments we buy.
This is where the structural differences between cellulose and petroleum polymers become an absolute environmental crisis.
The sad reality of modern fashion is that a staggering percentage of clothing just ends up in landfills. But when a cotton shirt is finally discarded because it's composed of biological plant matter, it's biodegradable.
Microorganisms in the soil actually recognize cellulose. They have the enzymes to break it down and return it to the ecosystem.
Conversely, the synthetic polymers in polyester and nylon are largely unrecognized by nature.
Right, they are functionally immortal on a human timescale. When a synthetic garment sits in a landfill, it doesn't biodegrade. It slowly fragments through mechanical wear and UV exposure into smaller and smaller pieces.
Eventually becoming microplastics. And those microplastics leach into groundwater and the broader environment.
But the research also points out that this shedding doesn't just happen at the landfill, it happens right in our homes.
Wait, really? Every time we do laundry?
Yes. Every single time you run a synthetic garment through a washing machine, the friction of the cycle causes thousands, sometimes millions, of microscopic plastic fibers to break off.
Oh, wow. And I assume those fibers bypass water treatment facilities.
Unfortunately, yes. They flow directly into oceans and rivers.
So, by simply choosing a natural fiber, you are cutting off that invisible stream of microplastic pollution right at the source.
Exactly. But the sources suggest the true sustainability metric isn't just about what happens when you throw a shirt away. The most sustainable garment is the one you rarely have to replace.
Because durability is the ultimate enemy of the fast fashion business model.
It really is. Fast fashion relies on synthetic blends because they're incredibly cheap to produce. But they're also engineered for obsolescence.
They pill, they warp, they retain permanent odors, forcing you to constantly buy replacements. Which makes sense of the shifting landscape in textile innovation right now.
For a long time, we equated technological advancement in clothing exclusively with the invention of new plastics. But the industry is pivoting.
The focus now is on enhancing the mechanical properties of traditional biological materials, right? We're seeing high-density cotton weaves that offer incredible durability and longevity.
And they do that without sacrificing the natural breathability and biodegradability. It is a return to foundational quality.
So if you invest in a well-constructed cotton garment, it can withstand years of heavy use and repeated washing without losing its structural integrity.
And that's how you shrink your personal environmental footprint, not just by choosing a biodegradable material, but by fundamentally stepping off the treadmill of constant consumption.
Okay, so knowing all this, understanding the thermodynamics of cellulose, the impact on the skin microbiome, and the ecological devastation of microplastics, it's incredibly empowering in theory.
It is.
But how does this actually translate into practice? When you are standing in a retail store or scrolling through an online catalog, how do you apply this material science to be a smarter consumer?
To bridge the gap between theory and practice, the research highlights a very compelling case study of how modern brands are adapting to this informed consumer. They specifically analyze companies like Apparelizer.
Apparelizer is an interesting example because they really seem to recognize a shift in the cultural expectation of clothing. We have moved past the era where people are willing to suffer for fashion.
Exactly. The modern consumer wants the aesthetic sharpness of a tailored look, but they outright refuse to compromise on the physical physics of comfort.
And Apparelizer's entire operational philosophy is built on that premise. They prioritize timeless architectural design, but the non-negotiable foundation of their manufacturing is high-quality, breathable fabric.
They engineered their garments under the assumption that a shirt should perform functionally just as well as it performs visually.
It sounds like such an obvious concept, but when you survey the landscape of modern retail, finding garments that prioritize physical comfort at a molecular level is surprisingly rare.
It's way too rare.
So based on the material science we've discussed, if we want to build a wardrobe that functions like this, what are the actionable rules for reading a garment?
Well, the very first rule is that you must become a ruthless reader of composition tags. You cannot trust the primary marketing label.
Oh, because brands will frequently advertise a cotton feel or a cotton blend garment, right?
Exactly. But when you check the actual tag, it might only contain 20 or 30% cotton, heavily subsidized by polyester.
The classic blend deception. They use just enough natural fiber to make it feel somewhat soft on the hanger, but the structural matrix is still mostly plastic.
You got it. You want to look for garments that are 100% cotton, or at the very least have a dominant majority of natural fibers.
Okay, so read the tag. What's the second rule?
Once you've confirmed the composition, the second rule is evaluating the density of the weave for your specific climate needs.
Right, because not all cotton is engineered for the same environment. Just because it's breathable doesn't mean a heavy denim jacket is ideal for July.
You have to match the architecture to the environment. Look for loosely woven lightweight cottons like poplin or seersucker for high heat, high humidity climates.
Because the loose weave maximizes the air gaps we discussed earlier.
Exactly. Conversely, look for denser weaves like twill or flannel for cooler seasons, where you want to trap a specific amount of body heat while still allowing moisture to escape.
That makes perfect sense. And the third rule, which ties directly back to our discussion on sustainability and avoiding fast fashion, is inspecting the physical construction.
It isn't just about the fabric. It's about how the fabric is held together. The stitching is the weak point of any garment.
So you have to examine the tension and density of the seams.
Right. High-quality brands engineer their stitching to move and flex with the natural give of a cotton weave.
If the seams are poorly constructed, the garment will just warp and lose its shape after a single cycle in the washing machine, rendering the quality of the fabric completely useless.
And the final, and perhaps most intuitive rule you have to prioritize the tactile test.
The touch test.
Yes, you must physically evaluate how the material interacts with your bare skin before you commit to it. If a fabric feels even remotely abrasive, stiff, or unnaturally slick in the perfectly climate-controlled environment of a retail store,
That sensation will magnify exponentially halfway through a stressful workday.
it requires a fundamental shift in how we assess value. Fashion trends, silhouettes, and color palettes are cyclical. They will always fluctuate.
But the biological imperative for physical comfort, temperature regulation, and skin health is a constant.
Building your wardrobe around garments that satisfy those constants ensures that your clothing acts as a tool that supports you throughout the day.
Instead of acting as an obstacle, you have to actively endure. You should never have to mentally manage your outfit while you're trying to manage your life.
I couldn't agree more.
Which brings everything we've discussed today into clear focus. We started by zooming all the way in to look at the microscopic, hydrophilic cellular structure of a plant fiber.
We explored how those tiny natural pathways dictate the microclimate of your skin, managing moisture and preventing bacteria from hijacking your skin's ecosystem.
We then traced the life cycle of that material, contrasting the natural biodegradability of cellulose with the permanent microplastic legacy of synthetic polymers.
And we established that true sustainability is ultimately rooted in durability.
And finally, we laid out the tactical rules for navigating a retail environment designed to sell you cheap plastics.
By checking the composition tags, evaluating the weave, and prioritizing actual material science over marketing buzzwords, you regain control over what you wear.
This exploration of breathable cotton definitively proves that when it comes to the clothes we actually live in, the unseen architecture of the material matters infinitely more than the surface design.
The next time you open your closet to get dressed, I encourage you to remember that you aren't just putting together a look, you're making a highly functional, biological choice.
You're determining your capacity for daily comfort. You're making an active decision about your dermatological health, and you are participating in a global ecological cycle.
It's a lot of power in a simple choice of fabric.
It really is. Before we sign off, I want to leave you with one final thought to mull over based on everything we've unpacked today.
Go for it.
Think about your absolute favorite, most worn piece of clothing hanging in your closet right now. You know exactly the one I'm talking about. Is it really the stylish design that keeps you reaching for it week after week, year after year? Or is it actually the invisible architecture of the fabric itself doing all the heavy lifting? Keep staying curious, and we'll catch you on the next deep dive.